Lieutenant Grace Holloway stood near the docking bay window and watched the alien ship come closer. The vessel was black and sharp, like a knife cutting through space. It moved with a kind of purpose that made her stomach feel tight. She had been on Horizon Station for 8 months now. It was a diplomatic station, a place where humans met with alien species to talk about trade and peace. Grace had seen many different aliens come and go. Some were friendly, some were strange. But she had never seen anything like the Vorathi. The ship locked into the docking port with a heavy clang that echoed through the metal walls. Grace straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. Her job today was simple. She was supposed to greet the delegation and take them to their quarters. Nothing more. The airlock doors opened with a hiss. The first Vorathi stepped through, and Grace felt her heart skip. He was massive, 7 feet tall, maybe more. His body was covered in scales that looked like black glass. They caught the light and shimmered with each movement. His eyes glowed a soft yellow, like lanterns in the dark. When he moved, she could see the muscles shifting under his scales. Everything about him said one word: predator. Behind him came 2 more adults, equally large and terrifying. But it was what came after them that surprised Grace the most. 3 smaller figures followed the adults. They were children. Cubs, she corrected herself. That was the word the briefing had used. Vorathi cubs. The largest cub was perhaps 4 feet tall. His scales were a lighter shade of black, almost gray in places. He walked with his chin up and his chest out, trying to look as big as possible. The second cub was smaller and moved with quick, nervous energy. Her eyes darted everywhere, taking in everything at once. The smallest cub stayed close to the adults, almost hiding behind their legs. This one moved carefully, watching everything but trying not to be seen. The lead Vorathi stopped in front of Grace. He looked down at her with those glowing eyes, and for a moment she felt like prey. "I am Ambassador Kethrak," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. The translator device on his chest turned his words into English. "You are our guide?" Grace nodded. Her mouth felt dry, but she made herself speak. "Yes, Ambassador. I am Lieutenant Grace Holloway. Welcome to Horizon Station. I will show you to your quarters." Kethrak studied her for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been approval. "Lead, human." Grace turned and began walking. She could hear the heavy footsteps of the Vorathi behind her. The sound of their claws clicking on the metal floor made her skin prickle. As they walked through the station corridors, she noticed that the cubs were falling behind. They kept stopping to look at things. The largest one, the male, had stopped to stare at a potted plant near the wall. He leaned close to it and sniffed. Then, without warning, he swiped at it with his claws. The pot shattered, and dirt flew everywhere. Grace stopped walking. Ambassador," Kethrak looked back at the cub and made a sharp clicking sound. The young Vorathi lowered his head and hurried to catch up. But Grace could see that he was not sorry. He was just obeying. "The cubs are curious," Kethrak said. It was not an apology. It was simply a fact. "They have never seen humans before. They have never been away from our home world." Grace nodded slowly. "I understand. But perhaps they should not destroy things." Kethrak made that grinding sound again. "On our world, if something cannot defend itself, it is weak. Weak things are taken or destroyed. This is nature." Grace did not know what to say to that. She just kept walking. They reached the quarters that had been prepared for the delegation. The rooms were large and mostly empty. The briefing had said that Vorathi did not like clutter. They preferred open spaces where they could see any threat coming. "The negotiations will begin tomorrow," Grace said. "If you need anything before then, you can use the communication panel on the wall." Kethrak nodded. "The cubs," he said. "They will not attend negotiations. They are too young, too disruptive. Grace waited. She had a feeling something was coming. They will need watching, Kethrak continued. Someone to keep them from causing problems, someone to answer their questions. He looked at Grace with those glowing eyes. You. Grace blinked. Me? Ambassador, I am not qualified to— You are small, Kethrak said, not threatening. The cubs will not see you as a challenge, and you are patient. I saw this when Skrell destroyed your plant. You did not attack. You did not run. You simply spoke. Grace wanted to point out that the plant was not hers, and that she had not attacked because attacking a Varathi would be suicide. But she kept her mouth shut. This is not a request, Kethrak added. His voice made it clear that the discussion was over. Grace looked at the three cubs. The largest one, Skrell, was watching her with narrowed eyes. The middle one was already exploring the room, sniffing at corners. The smallest one stood very still, watching Grace with an expression she could not read. All right, Grace said finally. I will watch them. Kethrak nodded once. Then he turned and walked deeper into the quarters, leaving Grace alone with three predator children who could probably kill her without trying very hard. The smallest cub took a careful step toward her. Up close, Grace could see that her scales had a faint blue tint to them. Her eyes were not yellow like the others. They were more orange, like dying embers. You are the human, the small one said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I am Tira. Grace managed a small smile. Hello, Tira. It is nice to meet you. Tira tilted her head, studying Grace the way a cat might study a mouse. You are very small, she said. How have you survived? Grace did not know if she should laugh or be worried. In the end, she just shrugged. Humans are good at finding ways to survive. Tira seemed to think about this. Then she nodded once and turned away. Grace watched her go and wondered what she had gotten herself into. The first day with the cubs was difficult. Grace arrived at their quarters early in the morning. She had barely slept the night before. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those glowing predator eyes watching her. When she entered the room, Skrell was already awake. He was doing something that looked like exercises. Push-ups, maybe. But with his claws extended. They scraped against the metal floor with each movement, leaving thin scratches. Human, he said without stopping. You came. I said I would, Grace replied. Skrell finished his exercises and stood up. Even though he was a cub, he was already taller than Grace. His muscles moved under his scales like snakes under a blanket. My father said you would watch us. This means you are our guard. Grace shook her head. Not exactly. I am more like a guide. I will show you the station. Answer your questions. Skrell made a sound that was probably a laugh. It was not a nice sound. A guide. So you are a servant. Grace felt her face get hot. No, I am not a servant. I am helping because your father asked me to. He did not ask, Skrell said. He told. There is a difference. When the strong tell the weak to do something, the weak obey. This is how things work. Before Grace could respond, the other two cubs entered the room. Vorka moved quickly, her eyes bright with energy. Tira followed slowly, staying close to the walls. Are we going to explore? Vorka asked. Her voice was higher than Skrell's, eager and fast. I want to see everything. I want to see where the humans eat. I want to see where they sleep. I want to see their weapons. We can visit many places, Grace said, but there are some areas that are restricted, off-limits. You cannot go there. Vorka's eyes narrowed. Why not? Because those areas are dangerous or private. Humans have rules about such things. Rules, Skrell said the word like it tasted bad. On our world, the only rule is strength. If you are strong enough to go somewhere, you go. If someone stops you, you fight them. Grace took a deep breath. This was going to be a long day. She led them out of the quarters and into the main corridor. The station was busy at this hour. Humans walked past in both directions, some in uniforms, some in casual clothes. Many of them stopped to stare at the cubs. Grace could not blame them. The sight of 3 young Vorathi walking through the station was not something anyone expected. Vorka noticed the stares. Why do they look at us like that? Are they afraid? Some of them might be nervous, Grace admitted. Your species is not well known to us. Many humans have never seen a Vorathi before. They should be afraid, Skrell said. We are predators. They are prey. Grace stopped walking. She turned to face Skrell directly. It took all her courage to look into those yellow eyes, but she did it anyway. That is not how things work here, she said firmly. On this station, no one is predator or prey. We are all equals. If you hurt someone, there will be consequences. Do you understand? Skrell stared at her. For a moment, Grace thought he might attack. His claws twitched, his muscles tensed. But then, slowly, he relaxed. You are brave for a small creature, he said. Or foolish. I have not decided which. Maybe both, Grace said. She turned and continued walking. They visited the engineering section first. The cubs were fascinated by the machines. Vorka kept asking questions about how everything worked. She wanted to know about power sources and life support and artificial gravity. Grace answered as best she could, though she was not an engineer herself. Tira stayed quiet through most of the tour. She watched everything with her orange eyes, but she rarely spoke. When she did speak, her questions were different from the others. Why do humans build machines to do work for them? She asked at one point. Are you too weak to do the work yourselves? Grace thought about the question. Not exactly. We build machines because they can do things better than we can. Faster, more efficiently. It lets us spend our time on other things. What other things? Thinking, creating, learning, being with the people we care about. Tira tilted her head. The people you care about? Family, friends, the humans who matter to us. Tira seemed confused by this. On our world, we have pack. Pack is about survival. The strong protect the pack because strong pack means better survival. But you speak of something else, something different. Grace smiled. We have a word for it. Love. Or maybe friendship. It is when you care about someone not because they help you survive, but just because you care. Tira stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned away and said nothing more. At midday, Grace took them to the mess hall. It was the large room where station crew came to eat. There were long tables and a counter where food was served. The smell of cooking filled the air. The cubs had never seen anything like it. Why is all the food in one place? Vorka asked. Where are the hunters? Where are the kills? We do not hunt for food on the station, Grace explained. The food is prepared for everyone. Anyone can come and take what they need. Skrell's eyes went wide. Anyone. But what if someone takes more than their share? What if someone takes all of it? People do not do that. We take what we need and leave the rest for others. But why? Skrell genuinely did not understand. If the food is there and no one is guarding it, why would you not take everything you can? Grace sat down at an empty table. The cubs sat across from her, their large bodies making the human chairs look small. Because if everyone took everything, there would be nothing left, Grace said, and then everyone would suffer. But if everyone takes only what they need, there is enough for all. That requires trust, Vorka said slowly. You trust that others will not take too much? Yes. Vorathi do not trust, Skrell said flatly. Trust is weakness. If you trust someone, they will betray you. Grace shook her head. That is not always true. Humans trust each other all the time. Look around you. The cubs looked. They saw humans sitting together, eating and talking. They saw crew members sharing food from the same plates. They saw someone get up to get more water and bring back cups for everyone at their table, not just themselves. "They are giving each other things," Tira said softly. "That human gave water to other humans without being asked." "That is called sharing," Grace said. The cubs all looked at her. "Sharing?" Tira repeated the word carefully. "Yes, when you have something and you give part of it to someone else, freely, without expecting anything in return." The cubs exchanged glances. Skrell and Vorka looked confused, but Tira looked at Grace with an expression that was hard to read. "I do not understand," Tira said. "Why would anyone do this? If you give away your things, you have less. Less food, less water, less power. Why would you make yourself weaker?" Grace smiled. She had been waiting for this question without even knowing it. "That is a good question," she said. "Would you like me to show you the answer?" The three cubs leaned forward. Even Skrell, who pretended not to care about anything, looked interested. "Yes," Tira said. "Show us." Grace reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bag of chocolate candies. She had been saving them for herself, a little treat for getting through a hard day. But now she had a better use for them. "Watch," she said, "and learn." Grace stood up from the table with the small bag of chocolates in her hand. The three cubs watched her every movement. Their predator eyes tracked her like she was prey about to do something interesting. She walked across the mess hall toward a table where a man sat alone. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and tired lines on his face. His name was Pete Russo, and he was one of the station's maintenance supervisors. Grace knew him a little. He was kind but often exhausted from long shifts. Pete was staring at a tablet screen, rubbing his eyes. He looked like he had not slept well. Grace stopped beside his table. "Hey, Pete, long day?" He looked up and gave her a weak smile. "Hey, Grace, yeah, the air recyclers in Section 7 are acting up again. Been at it since 4 in the morning." Grace reached into her bag and pulled out 3 chocolates. She set them on the table beside Pete's tablet. "These might help," she said. Pete looked at the chocolates, then at Grace. His tired face brightened. "Really? For me?" "For you." "Grace, you do not have to." "I know I do not have to. I want to." Pete picked up one of the chocolates and unwrapped it. He put it in his mouth and closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he looked a little less tired. "Thank you," he said. "Really, this means a lot." Grace smiled and patted his shoulder. "Get some rest when you can." She walked back toward the cubs, but stopped at another table along the way. A young woman sat there alone, picking at her food without really eating. Her name was Amy Lynn, and she was new to the station. Grace had seen her around, but they had never really talked. Amy always looked lonely. Grace sat down across from her. Amy looked up, surprised. "Hi," Grace said. "I am Grace. I do not think we have met properly." "Amy," the young woman said, "I know who you are. You are the one watching the Varathi cubs." Grace nodded. "That is right. How are you settling in? The station can be hard at first." Amy shrugged. Her eyes looked sad. "It is okay. I miss home, my family. Everything here is so different." Grace understood. She had felt the same way when she first arrived. Being far from Earth, far from everyone you loved, was not easy. She reached into her bag and pulled out 2 more chocolates. She placed them in front of Amy. "Here," Grace said, "a welcome gift, from one human to another." Amy stared at the chocolates. Her eyes got a little wet. "You do not even know me." "I know you are far from home. I know you are struggling. And I know that sometimes a small kindness can make a big difference." Amy picked up one of the chocolates. She held it like it was precious. "Thank you, Grace, really." Grace squeezed her hand briefly. "If you ever want to talk, find me. We humans have to stick together out here." She got up and walked back to the table where the cubs were waiting. She sat down and looked at them. "Well," she said. What did you see? The cubs were silent for a moment. Then Vorka spoke. You gave away your food. To strangers. They did not fight you. They did not even ask for it. You just gave it. Yes. And now you have less, Skrell said. He sounded almost angry. You had a full bag. Now you have less. You made yourself weaker. Grace held up the bag. There were still several chocolates inside. I still have enough for myself. But look at Pete. Look at Amy. What do you see? The cubs looked. Pete was eating his chocolates with a small smile on his face. Amy was staring at hers like they were made of gold. They look different, Tira said quietly. Their faces changed. They look happy, Grace said. They look happy. That is what sharing does. It makes people feel good, not just the person who receives, but also the person who gives. Skrell shook his head. This makes no sense. How can giving away something make you feel good? You lost resources. Grace thought about how to explain it. On your world, you survive by being strong alone, by taking what you need. But humans are not strong alone. We are weak, small, slow. If we tried to survive by ourselves, we would die. The cubs nodded. This matched what they already knew. So humans learn to survive together, Grace continued. We form groups, families, communities, and we take care of each other. When someone is hungry, we share food. When someone is sad, we share comfort. When someone is in danger, we share protection. But why would you protect someone who cannot protect you back? Vorka asked. Because today I might be strong, and you might be weak. But tomorrow it could be different. Tomorrow I might need help, and you might be the one who can give it. If I helped you when you needed it, you will want to help me when I need it. So it is trading, Skrell said. You give something now to get something later. It can be that, Grace admitted. But it is also more. Sometimes you share with someone knowing you will never see them again, knowing they can never pay you back. You do it because it is right, because it makes the world a little better, because seeing someone else happy makes you happy too. Tira was watching Grace with intense focus. You feel happiness when others feel happiness, even if they are strangers. Yes, humans are connected that way. We feel what others feel, not completely, but a little. When someone near us is sad, we feel sad. When someone near us is happy, we feel happy. Sharing spreads happiness. It makes the whole group stronger, even if one person has a little less. The cubs sat in silence, thinking about this. Grace let them think. She knew this was a lot to take in. Everything she was saying went against their entire way of life. Finally, Skrell spoke. On our world, if you showed this kind of weakness, others would destroy you. They would take everything and leave you with nothing. Has anyone on this station tried to take from me? Grace asked. Skrell paused. No. Because we have rules, agreements. We trust each other to follow them. And those who break the rules face consequences. Not from one person, but from everyone. The group protects itself. Social consequences, Vorka said slowly. If someone takes too much, the group pushes them out. Exactly. No one wants to be alone, so people follow the rules. They share, they cooperate, and everyone benefits. Tira stood up suddenly. She was small, the smallest of the three cubs. But her eyes were bright with something Grace had not seen before. Curiosity, maybe, or determination. I want to try, Tira said. Grace blinked. Try what? Sharing. I want to see if it works. I want to see if it feels the way you say. Skrell made a disgusted sound. This is foolish, Tira. You will look weak. Maybe, Tira said. But I want to understand. I cannot understand just by watching. I have to do. Grace smiled. She reached into her bag and pulled out 2 chocolates. She handed them to Tira. Here, start with these. Tira looked at the chocolates in her small clawed hand. They looked strange there, human treats held by a predator. "What do I do?" she asked. "Find someone who looks like they might want one. Someone who looks tired or sad or just bored. Walk up to them, offer the chocolate, say something kind." "Something kind?" "Something nice, like, 'I hope you have a good day.' Or, 'I wanted to give you this.' It does not have to be complicated." Tira nodded slowly. She looked around the mess hall, searching for someone. Her eyes settled on a young human man sitting near the window. He was looking out at the stars with an empty expression on his face. Tira walked toward him. Skrell and Vorka watched with disbelief. Grace held her breath. The young man noticed Tira approaching. His eyes went wide. A Varathi cub was walking toward him, claws clicking on the floor, predator eyes fixed on him. Tira stopped in front of him. She held out her hand, the chocolate sitting in her palm. "Human," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I want to give you this. I hope you have a good day." The young man stared at the chocolate. Then he stared at Tira. Then he looked over at Grace with a confused expression. Grace nodded encouragingly. Slowly, carefully, the young man took the chocolate from Tira's palm. "Thank you," he said. His voice was uncertain, but there was wonder in it too. "That is very kind of you." Tira tilted her head. "You are welcome." She turned and walked back to the table. Her siblings watched her with expressions that were hard to read. "Well?" Grace asked. "How did it feel?" Tira sat down. She was quiet for a moment. Then slowly she spoke. "Strange," she said. "I gave something away. I should feel loss, but I do not. I feel—" She struggled to find the word. "I feel bigger, like I am more than I was before." Grace smiled. "That is what sharing feels like." Tira looked at her remaining chocolate. Then she looked at her siblings. "Here," she said. She broke the chocolate in half and gave one piece to Vorka and one piece to Skrell. "I am sharing with you." Vorka took her piece with wide eyes. Even Skrell took his, though he tried to look like he did not care. Grace watched the three predator cubs eat their chocolate together. Something was changing. She could feel it. Something important was beginning. The days that followed were unlike anything Grace had expected. The cubs became obsessed with watching humans, not in the predatory way they had watched before, like hunters studying prey. Now they watched the way students watch a teacher. They wanted to learn. They wanted to understand. Tira was the most eager. The small cub followed Grace everywhere, asking questions about everything she saw. "Why did that human hold the door open for the other human?" Tira asked one morning. "It is polite," Grace explained. "The first human saw someone coming behind them, so they held the door to make it easier. A small kindness. But it took time. The first human had to wait. They lost seconds of their day." "Yes, but it made the second human's day a little better, and maybe the second human will hold a door for someone else later. Small kindnesses spread." Tira thought about this. "Like ripples in water." Grace smiled. "Exactly like that." They were walking through the station's common area when they came across something interesting. A group of humans had gathered near the recreation room. They were laughing and talking. "What are they doing?" Vorka asked. She had joined them today, leaving Skrell alone in their quarters. Skrell still pretended not to care about any of this, but Grace had noticed him listening more carefully when she talked. "They are having a party," Grace said. "A small celebration." "A celebration for what?" Grace looked closer. She recognized some of the faces. One of them was holding a small cake. "It looks like a birthday party. One of them was born on this day years ago, so the others gathered to celebrate his life." Vorka stared. "You celebrate the fact that someone is alive?" "Yes. We are glad they exist, so we show them." "How?" We give them gifts. We make special food. We spend time with them. We tell them that they matter to us. Vorka was quiet for a long moment. On our world, the day of your birth means nothing. You are either alive or dead, strong or weak. No one celebrates your existence. They only respect your power. Tira stepped closer to the group. The humans noticed her and went quiet. A Varathi cub approaching was still an unusual sight. The birthday man looked nervous. He was young, maybe 25, with brown hair and kind eyes. He held his cake a little tighter. "Hello," Tira said. Her translator crackled slightly. "I am told today marks the day of your birth. Is this true?" The young man nodded slowly. "Yes, it is my birthday." Tira tilted her head. "Then I wish you continued existence. May you survive another cycle." There was silence. Then the young man laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but a genuine, surprised laugh. "Thank you," he said. "That might be the most honest birthday wish I have ever received." Tira did not understand why he laughed, but she could see his face was happy. That seemed to be enough for her. The days continued. The negotiations between the human diplomats and Ambassador Kethrak were still ongoing, locked behind closed doors. Grace did not know the details, but she heard rumors that things were going well. The Varathi wanted access to human medical technology. The humans wanted access to Varathi star charts. It seemed like a fair trade. Meanwhile, the cubs were learning. Grace showed them the station's small garden. Humans grew plants there, not for food, but for beauty. The cubs did not understand this at first. Why grow something you could not eat? "Because it makes us feel good to look at it," Grace explained. "Humans need beauty. It feeds our spirits, even if it does not feed our bodies." Skrell had come with them this time. He stood at the edge of the garden, his arms crossed, trying to look bored. But Grace saw his eyes moving over the flowers. She saw the way he leaned a little closer when he thought no one was watching. "This is waste," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Grace picked a small purple flower and held it up to the light. "When I look at this, I feel peaceful. I feel connected to something larger than myself. On Earth, we have fields of flowers that stretch for miles. Humans travel great distances just to see them." "Travel to see plants," Skrell said flatly. "Travel to feel something, to experience beauty, to share that experience with people we love." Skrell said nothing, but he did not leave the garden. He stayed and watched as Tira carefully touched a flower petal with her claw, gentle as a whisper. The biggest test came a few days later. Grace was in the mess hall with all 3 cubs when a commotion broke out near the entrance. A human woman was crying. Other humans surrounded her, speaking in soft voices. "What is happening?" Vorka asked. Grace listened. She could hear pieces of the conversation. "Her mother," someone was saying, "back on Earth. The message came this morning." Grace understood immediately. Someone had died. The woman had lost her mother and was millions of miles from home, unable to be there. Tira was watching the scene with intense focus. "Why is water coming from her eyes?" "She is crying," Grace said quietly. "Humans do that when we feel great sadness, or sometimes great joy. But right now she is very sad." "Why?" "Her mother died. The person who gave her life, who raised her, who loved her. That person is gone now, and she is far from home, surrounded by people who are not her family." Tira looked at the crying woman for a long time. Then she stood up. "Where are you going?" Skrell asked. Tira did not answer. She walked across the mess hall toward the group of humans. They saw her coming and went quiet. The crying woman looked up, her face wet with tears. Tira stopped in front of her. For a moment, she just stood there. Then she reached into a small pouch she had started carrying at her side. She pulled out a smooth, dark stone. "Human," Tira said, I do not understand what you feel. On my world, death is simply part of life. We do not mourn. We do not cry. But I have been watching your kind. I have learned that you feel things deeply, that your connections to each other are strong. She held out the stone. This is a rock I found on this station. It is nothing special, just a rock. But I kept it because it was mine. The first thing I chose for myself in this strange place. I want to give it to you. The woman stared at the stone. She looked at Tira with confusion. I cannot take away your sadness, Tira continued. I do not have that power, but maybe this can remind you that even in dark times, there are things worth keeping, things worth choosing. I hope you find peace. The woman's tears fell harder now, but her face changed. There was something else there now. Wonder, maybe, or gratitude. She reached out and took the stone from Tira's hand. Thank you, she whispered. I do not know what to say. You do not need to say anything, Tira said. That is what I learned. Sometimes sharing does not need words. Tira returned to the table. Her siblings stared at her. Even Skrell looked shaken. That was your rock, Vorka said. You carried it everywhere. I did, Tira agreed. And you gave it to a stranger, a human you do not know. You will never see her again. Probably not. Vorka struggled to understand. Why? What did you gain? Tira thought about the question. Grace watched her, curious to hear the answer. I do not know how to explain it, Tira said finally. When I saw her pain, I felt something. A pull, a need to do something. And when I gave her the rock, when I saw her face change, I felt full, like I had received something instead of giving something away. She looked at Grace. Is this what you meant? About sharing? Grace nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Yes, Tira. That is exactly what I meant. Skrell stood up abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. He looked angry or maybe confused. It was hard to tell with Varathi expressions. This is wrong, he said. This goes against everything we are. Everything we were taught. Does it feel wrong? Grace asked quietly. Skrell glared at her, then his eyes dropped to the table. He was silent for a long time. No, he finally admitted. It does not feel wrong. That is what scares me. He turned and walked away, his claws clicking rapidly against the floor. Vorka watched him go, then looked at Grace. He is struggling, Vorka said. This is hard for him. He is the eldest. He was raised to be strong, to dominate. What you are teaching us challenges everything he believes. Change is never easy, Grace said, but it is often necessary. Vorka nodded slowly. Then she looked at Tira. I want to try too, she said. I want to know what it feels like. To give without expecting. To share without gaining. Tira smiled. It was strange to see a Varathi smile, but Grace was getting used to it. Then let us find someone who needs something, Tira said. There are always humans who need something. We just have to look. The two cubs got up and walked toward the entrance of the mess hall, searching for their next opportunity to share. Grace watched them go with a strange feeling in her chest. Pride, she realized. She felt proud of them. Who would have thought that 3 predator cubs from a death world could learn to be kind? The negotiations ended on the 7th day. Grace heard the news from Commander Pete Russo, who looked happier than she had seen him in weeks. The deal was done. The Varathi would share their star charts, opening up new regions of space for human exploration. In exchange, humans would share medical technology that could help the Varathi fight diseases that had plagued their species for generations. It is a good deal, Pete told her. Both sides win. That is rare in diplomacy. Grace nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. The negotiations being over meant one thing. The Varathi delegation would be leaving soon. The cubs would be leaving. She found them in their quarters, packing their few belongings. Ambassador Kethrak was there too, overseeing the preparations. When Grace entered, he turned to look at her with those glowing yellow eyes. "Lieutenant Holloway," he said. His voice was as rough as ever, but Grace thought she heard something different in it now. Respect, maybe. "I must thank you." Grace blinked in surprise. "Thank me? For what?" "My cubs. They are different. I have watched them these past days. They act strangely. They give things away. They speak kind words to humans they do not know. At first I thought they were ill. I thought something was wrong with them." He paused. His eyes moved to where the cubs were gathering their things. Tira was carefully wrapping something in a cloth. Vorka was helping Skrell lift a heavy case. "But then I watched more closely," Kethrak continued. "I saw how the humans responded to them. Not with fear, not with suspicion, with warmth, with gratitude. The humans on this station like my cubs. They seek them out. They smile when they see them." He turned back to Grace. "You taught them something my people have never understood. I do not fully understand it myself, but I can see its effects. They are better, happier, more at peace." Grace did not know what to say. She had not expected this. "I only showed them what humans do," she said. "They learned it themselves." Kethrak made that grinding sound that might have been a laugh. "You are modest. This is also strange to me. On my world, when someone achieves something, they make sure everyone knows. They claim full credit. You do not." "Credit is not the point," Grace said. "What matters is that the cubs learned something valuable, something they can take home with them, something they can teach others." Kethrak studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Perhaps this is why humans are so dangerous," he said. "Not because of your weapons or your ships, but because of this ability to change others without fighting them, to conquer through kindness." Grace smiled. "We do not think of it as conquering. We think of it as connecting." "Perhaps that is worse," Kethrak said, but there was no anger in his voice, only thoughtfulness. An hour later, the delegation gathered in the docking bay. The Varathi ship was ready to depart. Human crew members had come to see them off, including many who had received small gifts from the cubs over the past week. Grace stood near the airlock, waiting to say goodbye. Her heart felt heavy. She had not expected to care about these 3 predator children, but she did. Skrell approached her first. The largest cub had changed over the week. He still walked with pride, still held his head high. But there was something softer in his eyes now, something that had not been there before. "Human Grace," he said formally. His translator crackled. "I owe you an apology." Grace raised her eyebrows. "For what? When we first arrived, I thought you were weak. I thought all humans were weak, prey pretending to be something more. I was wrong." He reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out a small crystal. It was deep purple with veins of silver running through it. Even in the artificial light of the station, it seemed to glow. "This is a memory stone," Skrell said. "From our home world. My egg mother gave it to me before we departed. It has been in my family for many generations." Grace's eyes went wide. "Skrell, I cannot accept something so valuable." "That is exactly why you must accept it," Skrell said firmly. "You taught us that giving has meaning only when the thing has value. This stone is precious to me. That is why I want you to have it. To remember that even predators can learn. Even the proud can change." He pressed the crystal into Grace's hand. It was warm, like it held heat from a distant sun. "Thank you," Grace whispered. She did not trust herself to say more. Vorka came next. The middle cub was bouncing on her feet, full of energy as always. But there were tears in her eyes. Grace had not known Varathi could cry. "I do not want to leave," Vorka admitted. I want to stay and learn more. There is so much I do not understand yet. You can learn anywhere, Grace said. Take what you learned here and share it. Teach others. That is how knowledge spreads. Vorka nodded rapidly. I will. I promise. When I am older, I want to come back. I want to be a diplomat like my father, but different. I want to build connections, not just agreements. She threw her arms around Grace in a sudden hug. It was awkward and a little painful, her scales pressing against Grace's uniform. But Grace hugged her back anyway. I will miss you, Vorka said into her shoulder. I will miss you too. Finally, Tira stepped forward. The smallest cub moved slowly, deliberately. Her orange eyes were fixed on Grace with an intensity that made Grace's breath catch. Tira stopped in front of her. She said nothing for a moment. Then she reached into her pouch and pulled out a rock. It was small, gray, and lumpy. Nothing special to look at, just an ordinary rock that could be found anywhere on the station. But Grace knew what it was. She had seen Tira carrying it every day since they first met. It was her favorite rock. The first thing she had chosen for herself in this strange place. You gave this to the sad woman, Grace said softly. I saw you. I found another one, Tira said. On the observation deck. It is different. Not as smooth, not as pretty, but it is mine. She held it out to Grace. I want you to have it. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear them. Tira, this means so much to you. You should keep it. That is why I must give it, Tira said. You taught me that. The gift only has meaning if it has value. This rock has no worth to anyone else. It is just a rock, but to me it is precious. It represents everything I learned here. Everything you showed me. She pressed the rock into Grace's palm. It was cool and rough against her skin. When you hold this, Tira continued, I want you to remember. Remember the 3 predator cubs who came to your station knowing nothing about kindness, nothing about sharing, nothing about connection. You taught us. You changed us. You gave us something we can never repay. Grace closed her fingers around the rock. The tears were falling freely now. She did not try to stop them. What will you do when you get home? She asked. Tira thought about the question. I will share, she said simply. I will teach others what you taught me. It will be hard. My people do not understand these things. They will think I am weak. They will laugh. Some will try to take from me what I freely give. That sounds difficult. It will be, but you showed me something important. Being kind is not being weak. Being generous is not being foolish. It takes strength to give when taking is easier. It takes courage to trust when suspicion is safer. She looked up at Grace with those glowing orange eyes. You told me that humans survive not by being the strongest, but by working together, by sharing, by connecting. I believe you, and I believe that my people can learn this too. It will take time, many generations maybe, but it will start with me, with us. She gestured to her siblings. Skrell and Vorka stood nearby, watching with solemn expressions. We are the first, Tira said, but we will not be the last. The boarding announcement echoed through the docking bay. It was time for the Varathi to leave. Kethrak called to his cubs. They began walking toward the airlock, but Tira paused and looked back at Grace one final time. Thank you, human Grace, she said, for everything. Then she turned and walked away. Her small form disappeared through the airlock door. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Grace stood in the docking bay, holding a purple crystal in one hand and a lumpy gray rock in the other. Around her, the human crew members began to disperse, going back to their duties. Commander Russo walked up beside her. He watched the Varathi ship detach from the station and begin moving toward open space. I heard what happened, he said. The cubs. What you taught them. Word travels fast on a station this size. Grace nodded, not trusting her voice. The ambassador said something during the final session, Russo continued. He said his cubs learned more from one junior lieutenant than from any diplomatic briefing. He wants to establish a cultural exchange program. Specifically requested you as the human representative. Grace turned to look at him. Really? Really? He said you showed his children that strength does not require cruelty. That power does not require domination. He wants more of his people to learn these things. Grace looked down at the rock in her hand. Such a small, insignificant thing. Just a piece of stone from the station floor. But to Tira, it had meant the world. That was the power of sharing. It was not about what you gave. It was about why you gave it, the intention, the connection, the love. I will do it, Grace said. If they want me to teach, I will teach. Russo smiled. I thought you might say that. The Varathi ship grew smaller in the viewport, becoming a dark speck against the stars. Soon it would be gone, carrying 3 young predators back to their death world. But those predators were different now. Changed. They carried something with them that their species had never known. They carried the knowledge that kindness was not weakness, that sharing was not loss, that connection was the greatest strength of all. Grace watched until the ship disappeared into the void. Then she tucked the rock into her pocket, right next to her heart, and went back to work. There would be more Varathi to teach, more connections to build, more sharing to do. And it had all started with a bag of chocolate and a simple question from a curious child. What is sharing? Grace smiled to herself. It was, she thought, the most human question in the galaxy. And now, for the first time, it belonged to the Varathi, too.